Okay. I think this is part 6. Tea parties and negotiations. Hartman, I said, if you do not hurry back to Ehrenfest, 6 bell will ring. In general, 6 bell had marked the end of the day. Bell marked the end of the day of the work week. End of the work week. There were knights on duty at the teleportation hall at all times in case of emergencies. But after they clocked out, they wouldn't do anything for us without very good reason or an order from the Ob. This was especially troubling because Hartman, an adult, and the Ehrenfest high priest was permitted to be in the Royal Academy only for the day of the ritual. He needed to leave in time, or else he would be soundly punished. Hang on, guys, I'm pulling my sleeves down. I'm getting hot already. I forced Hartman, still in his high priest robe, into the teleportation hall alongside a wagon stuffed with boxes and the like. Please inform Sylvester that we will send our cleansed ceremonial robes at a later date, I said to Hartman. Also, be sure to personally deliver a report on today's ceremony. Understood. Things had started to get busier, but Hartman safely managed to teleport away in time. 6 bell rang as I saw him off, then I returned to my room. It's time for dinner, Lady Rosemine, Lazarus said. Let us get you changed. She and Grisha wasted no time undressing me and putting me in the normal clothes I wore around the Royal Academy. As I arrived at the dining hall, I found that Wilfred and Charlotte were already eating. You took a while, Rosemine, said the former. We just applied mana to the library's foundational magic tool, I replied, but it was located somewhere that students cannot usually reach. Quite out of the way. Still, it was fun. There were many magic tools there. I intended to make note of any beneficial ones mentioned in Raymond's report and incorporate them into my own library. How did the cleaning go? Let's see. What to say? Wilfred mused aloud. Ah, right. Lord Lestalot requested a tea party. We needed to finalize our research, including the parts related to today's ceremony, and decide how we're going to present it all during the introductory tournament. I had made a similar promise with Hannelore. I looked around at my attendants, wondering when would be a good time, and it was then that Charlotte started to giggle. Sister, Wilfred and Lord Lestalot actually... Charlotte, Wilfred snapped, sounding a little hysterical. He was acting a lot like one of my childhood friends from my Irano days. I'd found his stash of dirty books, and he desperately tried everything in his power to keep his mom from finding out about them. Come on then, Wilfred, I said. Tell me where you were hiding them. I wouldn't recommend under your bed. That's far too predictable. What are you talking about? She thinks he's got... There's no such thing as dirty books. Actually, the closest thing to a dirty book is your book. After blinking at Wilfred, surprised at his surprise, I turned to Charlotte for an explanation. There's no reason to hide it, brother. In fact, it must be reported. Sister, Lord Lestalot is going to bring several of the illustrations he has drawn to our next tea party. He has asked that you buy whichever ones you find most suitable for a dinner story. It seems that he wishes to read a complete version of the book as soon as possible. Wilfred met Charlotte's remarks with a slight frown. I've been looking forward to it since Lord Lestalot told me his illustrations have turned out really heroic and all that, but I was going to wait a bit before telling Rosemine. She just doesn't understand the hearts of men like us. Also, once the tea party becomes a subject of conversation, you'll hear about it from your attendants anyway. I was overwhelmed with the urge to sigh. Wilfred, the actual transaction may take place here in the Royal Academy, but the payment will not come from the dormitory's funds. Instead, it will come either from my own pocket or from that set aside for the printing industry. We need to correspond with Ehrenfest to decide which budget the funds will come from, and communication by letter takes time. I had written to Elvira as soon as we'd confirmed that we were buying illustrations from Lestalot, but we'd yet to come to an agreement. First of all, our choice would depend on whether we could use Lestalot's illustrations in our books. If we couldn't, then I would purchase them with my own money and print only a few copies specifically for Dunkelvugger. If we could, then we would use the printing industry funds and distribute the books more widely. Of course, in the latter scenario, we would need Elvira's permission. Book-related payments always seemed to come from you, so I didn't even realize. Wilfred said, now that Ferdinand was gone, Hartman was overseeing my finances. Although I might have money to throw around, I never had any on hand. Indeed, I replied, that is why you must give proper reports at all times. I can't believe I'm hearing that from you, of all people. You need to do the same, like today. That wide-scale healing thing wasn't part of the plan. I assume you're going to explain your reasoning to Father. You have to give a proper report, after all. I slumped my shoulders. In an unexpected twist, my own lecture had come back to bite me. Yep. After sending my report to Ehrenfest, I ended up bedridden with a fever. Plans for the upcoming tea party were gradually decided in my absence. Even from my bed, I tried to find out what was going on and what the budget was looking like, but Riardo just gave me a look of exasperation. Milady, focus on getting better before the tea party with Dunkelfugger. Brunhilde nodded. It was wise not to schedule any tea parties for immediately after the ritual. They continued to observe my health carefully, assisting with preparations for the tea party all the while. In the meantime, Feline and Muriella came with a report. Money has arrived from Lady Elvira, Feline said. It seems to be your own funds, Lady Rosemine. We can use this to buy Lord Lestelot's illustrations. If the illustrations were of a high enough quality, then our printing officials would simply buy them from us. For now, Lady Rosemine, rest and recover. It was only 2 days before I could move again, though my fevers were much shorter now than before. It was reassuring to know that my health truly was getting better. And on that positive note, I went to the dining hall to eat, then moved to the common room to find out what I had missed. Wilfred and I were invited to Professor Gundolf's laboratory while you were bedridden, Sister, Charlotte began. Everyone from Jerwonkel is very serious about obtaining divine protections. Right. I don't think any other duchy has every single one of its students preparing charms, Wilfred added, a serious look in his eyes. Huh? I said that Jerwonkel more than deserves its position as a greater duchy, I said. It was impressive that they had distributed charms to all of their students within 2 days, or at least given them the ingredients they needed to make their own. Yeah, Ehrenfest knew all of this before them, but none of our students made charms marked with the sigils of the gods. Our apprentice scholars, who experienced the same ritual, didn't even take the initiative to make charms to give out. There's a pretty clear gap between our duchies. To be clear, the only Ehrenfest apprentice scholars to have participated in the dedication ritual were those serving Wilfred and Charlotte. Sorry, I was thirsty. My apprentice scholars were all men nobles and lay nobles, so they hadn't been able to join. As we speak, Ignaz and Marianne are making charms in the brewing room, Wilfred continued. He then lowered his voice to a whisper and said, To be honest, I've been feeling a little down about it all. We had the intelligence before anyone else and still couldn't use it well. I'm not leading my duchy as well as Ortwin, even though we're the same age. Dude, you've got to learn. Charlotte tried to console him by saying that such skills were far from easy to master. Then she continued, I have plans for a tea party with the middle-ranked duchy tomorrow. There, I will see what other duchies thought of this event. You and Sister can focus on the tea party with Dunkelfelder. I nodded in response, and so came the day of our tea party with Dunkelfelder. Wilfred and I went to our tea party room at the agreed time, exchanged greetings with Lestelot and Hannelore, then took the seats we were offered. Everything was proceeding normally, that is, until Lestelot gave his retainers some kind of signal. Now, have a look at these. Brother, your illustrations can wait until after we have discussed the research, and we will only be able to focus once this matter has been dealt with, Lestelot replied, waving away Hannelore's attempted protest. He then got one of his apprentice scholars to spread 10 or so illustrations on the table, positioned so that Wilfred and I could see them in all their monochrome glory. As I was unaware of what degree of black and white contrast you would prefer, I determined it best that you decide yourself. Pick whichever one will suit the book most. My favorite was a close-up illustration of a knight atop their high beast, brandishing their weapon. It was so evocative that I could practically hear the fluttering of the cape. Lestelot had presumably adopted a thing or two from Will's art, as his lines were well organized and nicely suited our preferred black and white style. However, while Wilma's work was kind and gentle, Lestelot's was particularly energetic, befitting a battle over treasure. To be honest, I underestimated Lord Lestelot's art skills. I should have known that he was an excellent illustrator after all. He had been particularly vocal about his talents instead of merely saying that art was something he dabbled in, or what have you. He truly was on a whole other level. Very impressive, I said, peering down at the illustrations. These are even better than I imagined. These are wonderful, Lord Lestelot, Wilfred exclaimed soon after, his dark green eyes sparkling with admiration and respect. With such amazing illustrations, we can make a dinner story even more enjoyable. Do you not agree, Rosemine? I certainly do. They are wonderful. However, I should make one thing clear. As we will need to use a process known as stenciling to prepare these illustrations for print, their atmosphere is sure to change, even if only a little. Can we confirm that you understand this, Lord Lestelot? Lestelot knit his brows. What do you mean their atmosphere will change? I cannot say any more for fear of revealing our techniques, but at some point during the printing process, your art will need to be altered by another. Upon hearing this, Lestelot grimaced. As a pure-blooded artist, he must have found the very thought of someone else touching his work offensive. I can perform that part of the process myself, he said. That would make you privy to our method, so I must refuse. The current plan is for us to purchase the illustrations and then print them ourselves. If you cannot accept others making amendments to your work, then we will not be able to buy it. No matter who bought the illustrations, in the end we were going to do the stenciling in an Ehrenfest workshop. Putting aside cases where people went into our duchy or started serving our archducal family, I wasn't going to allow those from other duchies to do any of the cutting. This was doubly the case for the archduke candidates of a greater duchy like Lestalot. My declaration received a panic response, not from Lestalot, however, but from Wolfried. Hold on, Rosamund, we won't get illustrations this good anywhere else. We need to buy these to make a dinner story as good as it can be, right? We can have Lord Lestalot do the altering stuff as long as we contract him not to leak any information. Wolfried seemed very invested in Lestalot's illustrations. I appreciated that he was so enthusiastic about a book. It really was nice to see. But this wasn't the time. Above all else, Ehrenfest needs illustrations that are easy to print, I said. Though we do value their beauty as well, we gain nothing from buying art that we cannot actually use. Furthermore, we do not want to risk a greater duchy like Dunkelfelder stealing our newly researched technique before we have even begun selling books formally. I see, Lestalot replied. That is reasonable. Even then, Wolfried refused to give up. We have a chance to use such phenomenal art, he said, his eyes desperately flitting between me and the illustrations he loved so much. Indeed, was my response. These pictures are wonderful. Once we begin selling copies of the book in Ehrenfest and our buyers start producing their own splendid beloved covers, Lord Lestalot can add these illustrations to his and revel in their glory, but then others will not be able to see them, Wolfried said. I shrugged. There's no helping that. Keeping our industry secrets from leaking is our greatest concern. If your duchy Dunkelfelder the second were to steal from us, then we would not be able to protest. Stenciling was the very foundation of mimeograph printing, yet someone with a sharp eye would probably be able to deduce how it worked, simply by cutting out one of our illustrations. On top of that, the wax paper, styluses, and files were all the result of my Gutenbergs putting their heads together and really working hard. I couldn't let the fruits of their labor be stolen so easily. We would one day spread our printing knowledge to others' duchies, but we haven't even started selling books yet, so that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. Only when Ehrenfest's position had stabilized more would we consider that next step. As well as all that, allowing Dunkelfelder to make its own stencils would set an unwanted precedent that future duchies we collaborated with might attempt to follow. Swearing them to silence through magic contracts would surely be a nightmare, and an expensive one at that. Our actions here were going to have consequences for years to come. Besides, my aim here was to bring a talented artist into Ehrenfest, not buy illustrations from an archduke candidate. Printing is entirely different from drawing with pens, I said, trying to hammer home my argument. If nobody else is permitted to touch the illustrations, then I expect Lord Lestalot will complain when he sees the finished product. Even back on Earth, copier machines didn't create perfect copies. Some lines came out incorrectly, or hard to control factors like dust caused minor imperfections. In this case, although Lestalot's illustration was designed to work in black and white, it had many thin lines. It was unavoidable that its atmosphere would change after it was stenciled. This is going to be our first time buying art from another duchy, I continued. If we charge ahead with this collaboration only for Lord Lestalot to express his displeasure with our results, then we will severely damage the reputation of our printing industry. In that regard, not buying the art at all will spare both parties a great inconvenience. True, Wolfried reluctantly muttered, conceding with a look of severe regret. Relieved, I turned back to Lestalot, who was now watching me with an intrigued expression. With all this in mind, I said, "Will you sell your illustrations to Ehrenfest?" His red eyes, which had just a moment ago been evaluating me, crinkled in a slight smile. I understand Ehrenfest's position. I will consider whether I am willing to entrust them to another and then give you my response. Your work truly is splendid, I said, returning his smile, so I await a positive reply. Thus concluded that portion of my discussion. Lestalot gestured for his apprentice scholars to begin clearing away the illustrations, then watched them work while sipping his tea. Once they were done, he turned back to us and said, "Now, with that settled, let us decide who shall announce our joint research and in what manner." It seemed that if the two duchies working together each presented the results of their joint research, visitors would only visit the greater duchy. Thus, at times, even the lower-ranking duchy was made to present. In the case of our research, the only shared element was the questioning of the apprentice knights and your duchy students, I said. As there were quite notable differences between the rituals we performed, I believe we can announce our findings separately. Don't you agree, Wilfried? Yeah, I heard that Dunkelfelder successfully made pillars of light to obtain blessings, so you can include notes about that. If we publicize Ehrenfest's rituals, then there should be no overlap. Handler gave a relieved smile. How one publicized their joint research often mattered most when trying to get the attention of adults visiting the interduchy tournament. So it tended to cause disputes between the collaborating students. In that case, she said, perhaps our scholars can discuss the shared elements. That which is not shared, our duchies can present as we please. Wilfred and I agreed. We looked across the apprentice scholars present, and those involved in the joint research nodded to express their understanding. Ahrensbach is going to present Raymond's findings, so all we need to think about now is negotiating with Trawanko. For that project, Ehrenfest was only supplying the ingredients and wasn't contributing much to the actual research, so perhaps it would be best to leave most of the announcements to Trawanko. My only concern was knowing their findings and securing more kinds of paper made from fate plants to use. It seems we have finished our discussion sooner than expected. Lancelot turned to Wilfrid. How about a game of Gwenin, whatever. Most girls could spend forever chatting at tea parties, but boys found that exceptionally boring. I cannot talk. Wilfrid nodded, a broad smile on his face. I might have lost last year, but I want to win against you at least once before you graduate, Lord Lancelot. He was said to be rather skilled at Gwenin, and I'd heard that he often played against Ortwin of Trawanko. Unfortunately for you, if you still cannot consistently beat Ortwin, then you will never beat me, Lancelot scoffed, lighting a competitive fire under Wilfrid. Junkelfelger students got straight to work, setting up a game of Gwenin on another table, showing neither surprise nor any sense of urgency. They must have planned it from the very beginning, in case we ended up having time to spare. Not having anything else to do, I watched their preparations while eating sweets. My eyes soon came to rest on a blue Gwenin piece, which I noticed was modeled off of the clear crystal statue, also decorating Dunkelfelger's tea room. I see Dunkelfelger loves not just dinner, but Gwenin as well, I said. That piece is based on the decorative statue, is it not? Oh, yes, we use Gwenin when debriefing after dinner games, Hannelore replied, looking a little embarrassed. Those from Dunkelfelger loved dinner so much that not even their pre- and post-game rituals were enough. They gathered together to review each match as well. I had to wonder how much time they spent on dinner-related activities each year. Although you did not know what it was, Verfurimer's staff was passed down through the ages, I explained. It would not have survived if you did not care so much about dinner and rituals. Speaking of divine instruments, yesterday during a tea party at Top Ranking Duchies, we discussed almost nothing but the other day's ceremony, Hannelore began. Those who did not participate still spoke with those who did. Those who had participated in the dedication ritual had apparently been deeply impacted by their first proper religious ceremony. The feeling of us all becoming one, and the light that shot up from the chalice had left a great impression on all those present, offering something they had never experienced in their everyday lives. Those who had been unable to join now greatly anticipated their next opportunity. Normally, one must be first in class to receive direct praise from Zent Trarquold, Hannelore continued. Everyone was moved, though, not by that alone. Many were also touched by the divinity of your form, Lady Rosemine. Divinity? What the heck? Hannelore was looking at me somewhat dreamily as she described the ritual as she had witnessed it. From her perspective, I had produced one divine instrument after another, performed a religious ceremony that none had experienced before, and even rejuvenated everyone's mana before healing them all with a blessing. In other words, I had come across as quite the saint, despite all the panicking I was doing on the inside. My calm and composed act had paid off. Oh, definitely. So, in other words, nobody noticed that I was sweating bullets trying to keep my mana from leaking out. Wow, I really have grown. Yes, you have. You've gotten better. It has become something of a trend to make charms or prayers, and many are looking into whether they could wield the divine instruments as you do. Hannelore said, some wanted to use Flute-trained staff so they could heal groups of people at once, while others were fighting hard to get Ladenshaft's spear. However, as of yet, none have succeeded. They are producing the same spears with their staffs as before, and offering one's mana as per the ritual remains the most reliable way to earn blessings. That said, there were still people dying to wield Ladenshaft's blue glowing spear, including Ob Dunkelfelger, who had heard about it through a report. Thus, unless it's a secret that you must keep to yourself, might I ask how you learned to create multiple divine instruments, Hannelore asked. She looked extremely apologetic. Someone had clearly told her to ask me this. Well, how did you learn to create Verfurimer's staff used in Dunkelfelger's rituals? We watched our parents make it, touch it, then channel our mana into it, like this. Hannelore stood up to demonstrate. It seemed that my on-the-spot question had been interpreted as, if you want our secrets, reveal yours first. Strykolkin. Hannelore spoke the chant, and Verfurimer... Did I ask? Yes, go ahead. Try channeling some of your mana into it, even. I touched the staff and channeled a small amount of my mana into it as instructed. A magic circle rose up into the air, then Handler let out a little shriek as our mana rebounded. And my apologies, she stammered. That was, a bit surprising. I did not think I would feel another's mana going inside. It wasn't a big deal when members of the same family channeled mana together since they had similar mana to begin with, but mine felt particularly stronger to Handler. I understood how strange it was having another's mana flow into you, so I sincerely apologize for having made you uncomfortable, I said. Oh, no, I should have known that would happen. Now I understand why the method of creating the staff is passed down only through our Archducal family's bloodline. Handler replied. Her shoulders slumped. She then noted that she had thought it would be convenient if everyone could learn how to make the staff. Dunkelfelder was a very hot duchy, so maybe she wanted to perform a large-scale ritual to cool things down? If we only need the magic circle, we could try looking into the library's underground archive. I recall seeing a circle similar to the one that arose just now on one of the ceremonial instruments there. Or instructions there. Oh my, in that case we will need to wait for the royal family to summon us again, Handler said with a giggle. She didn't ask me how I had learned to make the divine instruments, although the process was pretty much the same as how she had been taught to create Verferer's staff. If you offer your mana to the divine instruments in the temple, then magic circles will arise, I explained. If you dedicate a certain amount of your mana to them, then the magic circles end up being seared into your mind, so to speak. They will naturally come to you when you transform your staff. In my case, Shutsuriya's shield was the first instrument I had ever offered my mana to, and the circle that had appeared at the time became my basis for making it. Perhaps the divine instrument in the temple were just there as guides for people to make their own? It seems that the first ever Zent was a high bishop, I said. My current theory is that their children learned to make their own divine instruments by offering mana to the ones in the temple. Following the Civil War, there was many from the temple who came to the Royal Academy, Handler noted, but none of them seemed able to use the divine instruments like you can. She sounded curious, but the explanation was simple. I imagine some of them could, but why would they display such a talent when the temple receives so much scorn? Not to mention, as you know, it requires a lot of mana to wield a divine instrument. Former blue priests and shrine maidens would not have learned to compress their mana before arriving at the Royal Academy on special terms, so I presume they would have struggled to maintain this instrument's forms. Daniel struggled even now, and he had compressed his mana to such an extent that he was comparable to a med noble. It was hard to imagine that students who had formerly been in the temple would have much luck trying to wield divine instruments. I would assume that any former priest who performed the temple's religious ceremonies seriously obtained multiple divine protections. But I cannot say the same for those who reviled the temple and wanting nothing more than to return to noble society, or those who resented the gods alongside their situation. To be frank, if the life of the blue priests had lived under the previous high bishop was the norm, then they would have been too corrupt to earn any extra divine protections. Not to mention, it was very possible that they wouldn't have been able to fill the magic circle during the ceremonies. I kept that all to myself, though, and merely wore a smile for Handler. Dunkelfelder has stories about divine instruments and gods not worshipped at shrines. Correct, I asked? I said, your history overwhelms us. Just the other day, one of your attendants said that Clarissa will become Abiglave upon losing Erwehrman. What did they mean? Such phrasing does not appear in any stories I am familiar with. The answer is within the book I am about to lend you, Handler said. Erwehrman, the god of binding, was once a friend and subordinate of Abiglave, the god of life. It was he who assisted the god of life in proposing to Gadul, the goddess of earth, and acquiring the permission of the god of darkness. It was because of Erwehrman's assistance that the marriage came to be. What happened next was as the Bible described. Erwehrman, outraged by the poor treatment that Gadul and her subordinates received, got into a fight with Abiglave before ultimately deciding to go his own way. Then determined to save the goddess of earth, he brought her subordinates to Flutrain, the goddess of water. To become Abiglave upon losing Erwehrman means to lose a person who supports your engagement. That belittling what you would treasure would only lead to you to lose your beloved, Handler concluded. I see. Now that Hartmut's our high priest, Clarissa's going to need a lot of support to marry him. But is Libeskville not the divinity responsible for binding, I asked? Erwehrman felt responsible for binding the threads that caused Gadul's suffering. For that reason, he surrendered his position as a god, instead giving his power to Libeskov. I see. That might explain why the Bible does not list him as a god. Interesting. So there are gods who are not gods anymore. I wonder how many of those are there. Or if he's the only one. My eyes darted to one of Dunkelfelger's scholars, specifically to what they were holding. If your book contains even more stories like that one, I cannot wait to read it. I myself have suffered quite a blow. To think the story of Fernestine would end where it did. I am terribly curious about what will come next. So Hannelore had caught the bookworm bug and was now hot itching for more. That was a good sign. She told me how her skin had crawled at the first wife's cruelty, how she had wept for Fernestine's situation, and how her heart had throbbed for Fernestine's protective half-brother. Her praise included the names of many gods, but I think we're doing okay, I think. I really am glad the story is not based on you, Lady Rosemine. Had it been, then the Ob would not have allowed it to be printed. Yes, I suppose that would be like him informing the world of his misdeeds. Still, there are many similarities between you and Fernestine. Your hair color, your coming first in class, your history of being taken in before your baptism. She lowered her voice. I suspect there will be many more others under the same misapprehension. I thank you ever so much for your concern, but the second volume will clear up any such misconceptions. All will understand that Fernestine and I are separate people. It should be out soon, I believe. Oh, please do allow me to borrow it. The first volume ended right after she finally escaped the cruel first wife by entering the Royal Academy, and had such a wondrous romantic encounter. I'm simply beside myself with curiosity. As it turned out, Hannelore was debating whether she should root for the half-brother who protected Fernestine or the prince whom Fernestine had just met, since both were so wonderfully romantic. Naturally, I wasn't going to mention that the second volume started with the half-brother finding another partner, but Elvira would surely be glad to hear that people were so angry at the first wife and invested in the romance. Speaking of being glad, Muriella seems to be enjoying this conversation. She's nodding along so vigorously. My one concern is that the author sometimes writes bittersweet tales of love. They are very beautiful, but if Fernestine meets a tragic end, well, I just do not know what I will do, Hannelore said, wavering with unease. Though I didn't want to spoil any of the details, I decided to reveal that in the end, Fernestine finds true happiness. I was sure that would allow Hannelore to relax and properly look forward to the sequel. I will support Fernestine until she finds that happiness, Hannelore declared with a smile, and with that moment, Wilfrid stood from his chair with a clatter, looking outright furious. You're wrong, Lord Lestalot. What the? The sudden exclamation caused all eyes to fall on the Gwenin table. Wilfrid was gritting his teeth, staring daggers at his opponent. Meanwhile, Lestalot waved his staff to him a piece, then casually looked up again. Wrong about what? Lestalot asked. Oh, boy, here we go. We're getting into some nitty-gritty stuff. The plot thickens. I'm going to be Ehrenfest's next op, not Rosemine. We just discussed this with Lies Gang. And we've already told their retainers that this is not happening, so what the fuck is going on? I guess this is not getting around yet. Ooh, confrontation. Oh, yeah, here we go. Hannelore informed me that she would be leaving her seat for a moment, then calmly walked over to Lestalot. Brother, what in the world did you say to Lord Wilfrid? She asked quietly. Lestalot raised an eyebrow, and looking at Wilfrid, replied, Nothing at all. His nonchalant answer made Hannelore's face cloud over. If that were true, then Lord Wilfrid would not have raised his voice. You must have offended him greatly, Lord Wilfrid. I offer my sincerest apologies for my brother's actions. Wilfrid snapped back to reality and offered a polite smile. Oh no, it was nothing that you should feel the need to apologize for, Lady Hannelore. In fact, I should apologize to you all. My shallowness caused me to flare up over a simple mid-Gwenin taunt. At that, Wilfrid carefully sat back down, turned to Lestalot, and moved a piece. Father, that is, Ob Ehrenfest, does not intend to make Rosemine an Ob, he said. He would never do something so cruel. You mean to say that it would be cruel to have her become Ob? Lestalot asked, moving a piece in response before directing Wilfrid a curious look. Wilfrid nodded and moved another piece. As you know, Rosemine is sickly enough that she has collapsed during several tea parties. He would not force his unhealthy daughter into such a demanding role. I ask for your understanding on this matter. Is he attempting to clear Sylvester's name? Or is he just annoyed that someone else is thinking that Rosemine is better to be the Ob than he is? Possibly both. Who knows? It is true that Sylvester wouldn't have his unhealthy adopted daughter serve as... It is true that Sylvester wouldn't have his unhealthy adopted daughter serve as Ob. Hearing that, I understood what must have happened. Lestalot had used Sylvester's bad reputation as a mid-game taunt. I'd found the unending rumors irritating as well, so I could see why Wilfrid had reacted so aggressively. As an Archduke candidate, I was probably expected to chastise him and prop up Dunkelfelger, but I couldn't see myself doing that. I thought it only common sense that the position of Ob should go to whoever has the most mana and can benefit their duchy most, but I see, Lord Lestalot said. Due to your sister's poor health, You will become the next Ob without consideration of your competence. Ooh, he's saying you're incompetent. I'd assumed that Handler's interjection would calm things down, but the taunts continued. Wilfred was balling his hands into such tight fists that his knuckles had turned white. I moved to the side of the table where the Gwendid pieces were floating in place, getting in between Lestat and Wilfred. I do not see what's so strange about this. It isn't not normal for a healthy man with enough mind to support his duchy's foundation to become the next Ob. Sure, I was getting healthier, but I was still weak, by any normal standards. And on top of that, I was a woman. I wouldn't be able to carry out my duties while pregnant or after giving birth. It was totally expected that Wilfred would become the next Ob, and instead, especially considering his high grades at the Royal Academy. I mean, she's not even thinking about the possibility of the process of getting pregnant, aka sex. She's not even thinking about this at this point, because I would be freaking out that I would have to do that with Wilfred someday when we got married. You know, that's kind of... she's just taking this all in as nonchalantly here. I don't know why, but anybody have any ideas on that one? I'd love to hear it. Lestat's red eyes betrayed amusement. For a moment, it felt like he was teasing us, or maybe even sizing us up, but I couldn't help but falter under his terrifying stare. So, in short, you intend to resign yourself to becoming a first wife, Lestat asked, despite all of your exceptional qualities. I shook my head. I am not resigning myself to anything. I do not seek to be an archduchess in the first place. Then what do you seek? I smiled. There was only one answer to that question. I wish to become an archduke's first wife, then the curator of my very own library. I should gather more books than anyone has ever seen before. That goal was why I had started the printing industry to begin with. We were gathering various stories in the Royal Academy, making new books each year, and steadily increasing our readership. From there, we would target the commoners, starting with the literate rich, and then working our way down until pretty much everyone could read. Such was my ultimate ambition. Yes, I wanted enough status to achieve my aims, but I didn't wish to do any work other than reading books. I certainly didn't want to become an archduchess. I was busy enough just becoming the high bishop. You wish to be the first wife and own a library, Lestat repeated. That can be arranged. What? He outright says it! He outright says it! Oh my god! This is gonna be, oh dear. Brunhilde, Lesletta, somebody, go and send Aaron Fest a message. We got a situation over here. Though I think they would have to wait until they find out the results of this little, question. Dude, isn't that how you do that? Become my first wife, froze mine. Excuse me? There was a... What? Who the fuck wrote that? Why is that a word in that... Why is that an adjective in this sentence? There was a pregnant pause. Then a hysterical voice suddenly rang out. Brother, what are you saying? Be silent, Handler, Lestat said, waving her away. Handler took a step back, her lips pressed together obediently. Those among Lestat's retainers who had cried out in surprise likewise closed their mouths, overwhelmed by his intensity. This was also something that I was struggling to keep up. I wanted to believe that I had simply misunderstood, but if all the dazed faces around me were anything to go by, that probably wasn't the case still. My sincerest apologies, Lord Lestat, I said. I seem to have misheard you. For a moment, I thought you asked for me to become your first wife. Oh wait, I must have water in my ears or something. I could have swore you said something crazy. You are not mistaken, he casually replied. That is exactly what I said. I placed a hand on my cheek. His wanting me as a first wife was, in other words, a proposal. But this didn't make any sense. Lestat already had someone he was gifting a hairpin to, and proposals between nobles had to go through both parties' parents first. At least that was what I had assumed. Maybe romances between students at the Royal Academy didn't get reported until afterward? I mean, I think that Hartman and Clarissa are one to go by on this one, because I think that they had already decided upon it before even talking to their parents. I don't know. I'd never really looked into it since I was already engaged, but now that decision was backfiring. But don't proposals involve a face stone and a long romantic speech filled with the names of the gods? I'm pretty sure you don't just let them don't slip them into an otherwise normal conversation. Or have I been living under a rock? Probably. I don't think Lestalot's the type to be all romantic and do all that stuff. The proposal face down, maybe. But the long romantic speech, I don't think he's like that. I think he's just like blunt. Like he just did. How was I supposed to take Lestalot's words? He knew about my engagement to Wilfred, so maybe this was all in jest and taking it seriously would only result in me getting laughed at? As I remained immobile, my hand still on my cheek, Lestalot looked at Wilfred and me. You have shown me your value. You have the mana to wield 2 divine instruments at once, and a plethora of divine protections. You start new trends, began at the industry that brings wealth to your duchy, have connections to greater duchies and the royal family, possess fame as a saint, and yet, despite all that, Lord Wilfred is calling himself the next Ob, even though he knows so little about what will soon be his duchy's primary industry. Oh, yeah! Yeah, because, yes, he might be getting involved in it, but he knows next to nothing about it. Because Rosemind's getting directly involved in this thing. He is not. Not as near as much as she is. A taunting grin spread across his face. It would be comical were it not so sad. He continued, Furthermore, Rosemind, although grades have risen all across Ehrenfest, you and your retainers stand far above the rest. And this joint research has made the chasm between your Archduke candidates more than clear. It is a crime that your duchy's rank has risen so exponentially, due so largely to your singular influence. And he's not wrong. It is because of her influence that all this has been going on, because she did all that stuff for the Winter Playroom and started getting everybody studying and everything to get their duchy's grades up. This is her influence. Those around you are not keeping up at all. Ehrenfest lurked at the bottom of the rankings before the Civil War, and its neutrality secured it a middling rank after. You are ill-suited for such a place. There wasn't a significant difference among our duchy's apprentice knights. They had all undergone extensive training under Bonifacius so that they were skilled enough to protect the archducal family. Some of the dissimilarities among them were dependent on their age, when they had begun using the mimetic compression method. Otherwise, it all came down to their inherent talents and hard work. Our apprentice scholars and attendants, on the other hand, were a separate story. My scholars who visited the temple had been molded by Ferdinand's intense training, and my attendants had to work to be ready for anything I might start. For those reasons, they were far more capable than those serving Wilfred and Charlotte. A bottom-ranking duchy weighed down by such outdated methods is no place for a ceaselessly innovative mind such as yours, Lestalot continued. Ehrenfest may be rising to the ranks through your power, but it will not be able to keep up with you. Its rightful place remains at the bottom of the rankings. I admire the sagacity. What the heck is that? I guess his decision in plucking you from the temple, but one who would not immediately declare you the next Ob does not understand your value. Ehrenfest has neither the capacity nor the ability to contain you forever. His smile exuding confidence, Lestalot gazed across Wilfred and all the Ehrenfest retainers in the room before returning his eyes to me. If you had decided to live not as an Ob, but as a first wife, then come to Dunkelfelder. We have stockpiled countless books and documents over our long history. Our collection is larger than any other in Jurgensmith. Excuse me? I beg to differ on Ferdinand's. We don't know how many books he's got, but I would guess that he has a very large collection himself. And do you really think she's going to leave Ehrenfest? Even with all this? The only reason I think she would stay in Ehrenfest is because of her family, or, her biological family. If she could get in contact with Ferdinand a whole heck of a lot easier. And anybody she cares about, essentially. So, yeah. If she didn't have all that, she might take you up on your offer. Excuse me? Books and documents stockpiled over a long history, you say. A collection larger than any other in Jurgensmith? Oh, please. We'll see about that. Oh, be still, my BDR. It sounds so... She's actually considering it! What the fuck, dude? Rosemind, this is exactly why they told you you had to keep your wits about you and not charge ahead when books get involved. This is exactly the type of situation you need to not charge straight into. I couldn't help being enraptured, and some powerful emotion stirred in my chest. Still, I used all my might to keep my body from visibly swaying. I needed to think carefully. This was an invitation from Dunkelfelger. There was more to this than reading books. Experience made it clear that dinner was involved somehow. I will not go, I said. You're considering it. No, I am not. And my engagement to Wilfred already has the king's permission. It cannot be canceled. Yes, he can. It can be canceled. He can cancel it. The king can cancel it. All he has to do is get a very convincing enough argument on it, and he could cancel it. Duh. He's the king. He can cancel whatever he wants. And besides, Dunkelberger is a big enough ally for him that he would cancel it if he thought it would benefit. Excuse me. I retorted, puffing out my chest. It didn't matter what anyone said. This was a done deal. Lestalot waved me away as though he thought the very idea foolish. That is permission and nothing more. There is no royal decree supporting it. Engagements from within the duchy are always simple to cancel. Your op could rescind it with a single word. He could. He could do that. Because it's not really it's not like the king's declaration that let Ferdinand go to Arensbach. That's one thing. That's the king's decree right there, though he could still cancel that. But yeah, that's not the king's decree. That was Sylvester's decision on that one. It seemed that having the king's permission didn't make any union to Wilfrid ironclad after all. Sylvester could end it without any trouble whatsoever. Dunkelfelger could even pressure Ob Ehrenfest to cancel your engagement. The fact we have not done so already was only because we did not realize your value. Now we do. By discussing business with me and not backing down in the slightest, you have all but proven that you are fit to be our duchy's first wife. If you wish to make books and spread your knowledge, there is no better place for you. Come to me, Rosemine. Do you really think she's going to do that? Oh boy, this is going to be interesting. Financial resources, manpower, the fancy footwork required to adopt new ideas, and understanding of the importance of new technologies. One by one, Lestalot listed off areas in which Dunkelfelger was superior. They were all things that I wanted. My heart wavered more and more. I told you! Ooh, here we go. This is what says her no. You will find much better workers in Dunkelfelger than in a backwater duchy like Ehrenfest. Excuse me? I don't think there's anyone in the world who can match my Gutenbergs. All at once, my excitement ceased. Going to Dunkelfelger would mean not getting to see my family again. It would mean abandoning my important duty of serving as a bridge between the nobles and the commoners. Not to mention, Ehrenfest was home to the library that Ferdinand had given me. I wasn't going to sever all those connections that I had treasured so dearly. You have made a very appealing offer, but I must refuse, I said. At times like this, I needed to be clear and direct. Even the slightest hesitation would allow a greater duchy like Dunkelfelger to play me like a fiddle. Above all else, I needed to make my stance clear. I had no intention of going to Dunkelfelger. Lestalot moved to Gwen in peace, then stroked his chin. I offered what I considered to be a good terms, but you ultimately refused, he muttered. Where was my misstep after I made your heart waver so strongly? He noticed! She still wears her heart on her sleeves here. Because you insulted her workers. That's why. Yeah, he had clearly been able to read my emotions through my face. I was starting to feel relieved about having escaped this predicament, but then Lestalot's atmosphere changed. His calm, befitting a noble, morphed into the intensity of a knight preparing for dinner. Uh-oh. If you refuse, then I have no choice but to take you by force. Lord Lestalot, I exclaimed. Brother, you must not. Lestalot once again dismissed Handlor's protest, his eyes like those of a predator watching its prey. Obtain what you desire. Gather the strength required to win. Face the challenge as many times as it takes. Change your techniques, change your equipment, but never give up. That is the Dunkelfelger way. I never expected Lestalot to look at me in that way, especially when he had originally seen me as a fake saint and a spineless trickster. Plus, I already knew from Clarissa's proposal that those from Dunkelfelger were ruthless when it came to getting what they wanted. Lestalot's attitude and the way he was speaking reminded me of the same forceful, dominant aura he had given off during our first confrontation over Schwartz and Weiss. I took a step back. Rosemine, Wilfrid called out from behind me. I turned to look at him. I can't deny that Ehrenfest lacks in more areas than it thrives. Do you truly wish to stay? He asked, looking uncomfortable. I am. Only now, after hearing Lord Lestalot say all that, have I come to understand your true value. I've always been focused on ways to keep you under control, unlike Dunkelfelger and Jawankel. I never thought about putting all your knowledge to use or spreading it throughout the country. I may intend to become Ehrenfest's next Ob, but my focus should be on how to use your gifts, not suppress them. His shoulders slumped. Wolfried continued. I've been an honor student for 2 years in a row, and my friendship and rivalry with Ortwin made me believe I was standing shoulder to shoulder with the top-ranking duchies, and yet, when we started our joint research with Jawanko and it came to light that my apprentice scholars were vastly inferior, I gave up. I assumed there was no beating a top-ranking duchy. In Ehrenfest, Wolfried was always being compared to me in a way that made him feel so mediocre. Here in the Royal Academy, however, he was able to spend time with other Archduke candidates and actually develop some self-confidence. He considered himself above average for an Archduke candidate, though that mindset had soon turned to arrogance that he was working hard enough already. The greater duchies immediately figured out all your good points and tried to make them their own, he muttered. That never even occurred to me. I always thought that since making books is like a hobby to you, it was best to leave the industry in your hands. There was no way that Wolfried would have grown up with the sensibilities of a top-ranking duchy when he was raised in what everyone still considered a bottom-ranking one. The only way he was going to fix this was by learning while spending time with his friends from top-ranking duchies. If you've noticed that you aren't putting me to proper use, then you need to only start, I said. Everything I care about is in Ehrenfest. I do not intend to leave. Ehrenfest is my Geduld. I see. Then as the next Ob, I will protect you, Wolfried declared with the utmost confidence. Failing to do that when you want to stay in Ehrenfest will make me a failure of a brother too. Lestalot gave a ferocious grin. If you were to call yourself a future Ob, then prove your worth and keep Rosemine from us. I challenge you to a game of dinner. To nobody's surprise! This desire for Rosemine to become Dunkelfelger's first wife is not just my own, Lestalot noted. I made agreements with both my father and mother. Wow, you've already talked to your parents about this! I should use whatever means necessary to secure victory and force Ehrenfest to cancel your engagement. In other words, he intended to use Dunkelfelger's status as a second-ranked Greater Duchy to slam us with pressure. I couldn't imagine Sylvester taking the stress of that very well. What happens if we refuse your challenge? Wolfried asked. Lestalot scoffed. I will simply employ the same methods I would have used upon winning. And if we win, will you give up on Rosemine? Dinner matches are sacred. I swear to the gods that if we lose, we will trouble her no further on this matter. Those from Dunkelfelger were annoying to deal with, what with their aggressive nature and obsession with dinner, but when it came to agreements like this, you really could trust them. That said, Lestalot had been wailing into us this whole time. The last thing I wanted was for everything to go as he pleased. What's his weakness? In his attempt to drag us into this dinner match, he was targeting all of our weak points. The bad rumors about Sylvester, the awkward position that Wolfried was in, my love of books. I needed to land at least one clean blow on him, one that would leave a nice big bruise. Else I wouldn't be satisfied. What weakness could I exploit to avoid this dinner game? I scanned the room, and then my eyes fell on Hannelore. She was looking right at us, her face a picture of worry and frustration after her failed attempts to stop Lestalot. In that case, I said, on the day that Ehrenfest wins, my brother Wilfrid would take Lady Hannelore as his second wife. What? Wilfrid exclaimed. Rosemine, what are you saying? Lady Rosemine? Oh my god, Rosemine, what are you doing? You need to discuss this with Sylvester first to do this, but freaking can't really discuss it right now. Shock and disbelief were clear on their faces. Their retainers stirred too. Overall, it was a slightly bigger reaction than when Lestalot had proposed to me. I'd won. As you might know, Lord Lestalot, my health is tragically irregular, and Wilfrid needs a second wife. Ehrenfest could ask for nothing more than for an Archduke candidate from Dunkelfelger to fill that role. You would drag a Dunkelfelger Archduke candidate as low as Ehrenfest of all places. Don't make me laugh, Lestalot barked, his eyebrows raised in outrage as he protectively stood in front of Hannelore. It appeared that my counterattack had succeeded. You can decide for yourself whether we go ahead with this. I find it equally absurd that you would exploit your duchy's position to end an engagement approved by the king himself. If they were serious, then I was serious too. But if they were willing to play it off as a joke, then I would do so as well. So, Lord Lestalot, is your dinner request legitimate or merely a jest? Ideally, I wanted him to back down. The very thought of sending Hannelore to be Ehrenfest's second wife was unthinkable, but while we would have no choice but to accept Dunkelfelger's game, they would need to consult their Ob about one of their own being married into a middle duchy. Sorry, Lady Hannelore, I needed to do anything I could to avoid this dinner match. Wilfrid must have figured out that I was trying to stop the dinner match. He swiftly recovered from his surprise and gave Lestalot a confident grin. Do you really think it acceptable to wager your own little sister's future on a game of dinner? I would advise you to consult your Ob first. It is simply unfair of you to continue otherwise. Lord Wolfried, Handler uttered, "That's right, brother. You cannot put our futures at stake, as a jest or otherwise. Lady Rosemine is already engaged." Unfortunately, her pleas fell on deaf ears. "This is no jest," Lancelot said. "I am resolved to make Rosemine my own, for the future of Dunkelfelder." "You must not decide such things on your own. If we lose, Father and I will decide whom you wed," Lancelot said firmly, forcing the now trembling handler to avert her gaze and take a silent step back. "Your answer, Ehrenfest?" Wilfrid glanced at me, his expression unsure. "Rosemine, are you really willing to put your future in my hands? No game of dinner with me as the treasure will ever be lost, Wilfrid." My future depended on the outcome of this game. I was going to go all out. After receiving a much-needed push from me, Wilfrid turned to his retainers. "I will protect Rosemine, the treasure of Ehrenfest, with everything I have. Everyone, lend me your power." "Yes, my lord," the apprentice knights replied in unison. Wilfrid, having seemed to gain strength from that, looked up at Lancelot. "I accept your challenge. I am the next Ob Ehrenfest, and we will not let another duchy take our treasure so easily." "Well said." Preparing for dinner. Bride taking dinner! Yes! I knew this was coming! I just didn't know when or how. Especially considering we got that little conversation in the side story, or was it the epilogue or whatever, in the last book. I knew it was coming. I just didn't know how it was going to be brought up. Anyway, I'll get to work on editing this, and I will see everybody in the next video. Dang it. Okay.